So hey guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, and today in this video we're going to be continuing our JavaScript for beginner series. And in this video we're going to be learning about for loops, and we're going to be learning about functions. After we've learned about functions, we're going to be learning about different kind of operators as well. So let's get into the video. So we need to start up and open up our Visual Studio Code. So let me open up a new window over here. And in the previous video I told you to complete a test that I've given. So let me go ahead and give you the solution to the test. I hope many of you have completed, or even if you haven't, you can simply go ahead and look from over here. JavaScript, it was in chapter 1, and I'd like to open this. And the index.js, see, I have told you to write a program where you take an input from the user and check if the user is above 18 or not, and if the user is greater than 14 or not. So this is the solution to it. We've just taken an input from the user. We're parsing the value as integer before. We're taking in the prompt, and we're simply going to go ahead and check if the user is above 40, and we can tell them that you are too old to drive. And else if the user is greater than 18, then we can simply say that you can drive. Else if these two conditions don't match, that means you can say that you are too young to drive. So that is it. So this is it about the chapter 1. In the chapter 1 we've learned about operators. So I'm really sorry about the logical operators. I actually told you that these were the logical operators, but I just actually did a big typo. It was actually, this is actually what we know as logical operators. These are and or operators, so I'll write it over here, and or. So now this file is going to be available in my GitHub, so you can go ahead and use this file to actually learn more. And here are the notes as well. I've given you the descriptions and all those stuff. So now let's begin to another chapter without any delay. So I've already created an HTML file. So inside of the head, so I'm going to be giving you a little bit of trick to JavaScript. So the trick to JavaScript is inserting the script tag inside of our head. I told you in the chapter 1 that, I told you in the previous video that you cannot insert you cannot insert script into the head. So, but there's a special use case over here. So in this use case, we can use a differ attribute, and then we can type in our source, which is index.js, and if we go into index.js and type console.log, you are welcome to the chapter 2. Now I'll go ahead and save this, and if I go into the live server, if I inspect this one in the console, we can see that you are welcome to chapter 2. So yep, we can actually use JavaScript inside of the head, but this differ is going to differ our JavaScript, and it is going to load only when the website is loaded fully. So now we've successfully done that, and we're simply going to go ahead and start our chapter 2. In the chapter 2 we are going to be learning about functions. So functions. So what are functions? Functions are those kinds of entities in JavaScript that lets you to do work at a time. So it's like the reusable chunks of code. So it's reusable chunks of code that provide a certain TIONA functionality. So what am I talking about? So functions, you might know what functions are. Functions in your basic life, suppose let's take an example of your brain. Your brain functions, right? Your brain is already set up in a way that it is going to go ahead and do certain kind of stuff for you. So like thinking, imagination, all those etc. are already set up inside of your brain, and it does the things when your brain is conscious. Okay, So it does the things just like that. The brain is calling that stuff. So in JavaScript, that is the same. We call the functions and we use them. So to create a function, we need a function keyword over here. And after we write in the function keyword, we're going to write the name of the function. So in this case, I'm going to go and sum three numbers, sum num, and in the sum num, we can simply go ahead and create like this. So I'm going to go ahead and say const a is equals to let's go for a input from the user. Prompt, we can go for enter a number. Const b is equals to the same as this one, so enter second number, and const c is equals to prompt enter third number. Now, yep, we've successfully done that. After doing so, what we can do inside of the function is that we can go ahead and console.log a plus b plus c, or we can go ahead and give a bracket over here and use backticks. I told you about backticks. Backticks are basically those that allow us to use JavaScript inside of the string. So we can say that the sum of three numbers is, and we can simply go ahead and pass in this one. Now if we go and refresh this website, okay, I'm not calling in the function. So to run this function, we should call it. So your mom calls you when you are too late, or even your someone, maybe some relative calls you. It's just like someone calling you, hey, how are you? That you respond to them, right? So this is just like calling a function and the function is responding. So if I go on to go and say that enter a number, and I'll go for 65, 47, and 78. Okay. So the sum of three numbers is for, okay, I did some mistake, or did I guess I didn't do any kind of mistake. Oh. Now these are not integer, these are string. You can see that the value is string. So to convert them to integer, we can go for parse int. We are parsing int these values. So I'm gonna do the same over here. Parse integer. We're converting this into number. We are not doing much. Parse int and prompt. Now if we go ahead and check this one, which is 65, 75, 63, it is going to go ahead and say the sum of three numbers is 203. So that is what essentially function does. But instead of making these three variables over here, we can actually reduce that. So how can we reduce that? To reduce that, we can simply go ahead and come up with something called parameters. So these are known as parameters. And what are parameters? Parameters are essentially the things that are passed on to the functions. So parameter work as a value that lies inside of the function. It's like a prop, it's like a property of a function. So the property of a function, maybe I can go for a, b, and c. So just like setting up a variable, just like we did before by using const, they are simply just variable which contain value while being called. But while being called, as I said, that these contain value while being called, but we are not passing in the value while we are calling. So to pass in the value, we simply go for 5, 6, 7, or we can go for any numbers we desire. So if I go ahead and do that, and I run, and it is going to go ahead and say the sum of three numbers is 21. See, that is how easy it is. That is how easy it is to work with JavaScript. Now we can simply use those parse integer and we can get the number over here, but this is the basic approach that we use with functions and parameters. So yep, you've understood about parameters, and we've also learned about the functions. So now after we go ahead and learn about functions, we are going to learn about for loops. For loop. Now wait, let me go ahead and introduce loop to you. So what are loop? You may be known you know that loop actually means the repetition. It means that something is repeating in a certain kind of pattern, okay? Loop is the same thing in JavaScript. Suppose I'll give you an example over here. I'll tell you that print the numbers from 1 to 10. What are you gonna do? You're simply gonna go ahead and say print, you're simply gonna go for console.log, and you're gonna go up to 10 times and you're gonna log out each of the numbers. But instead of doing that, we can simply go ahead and create a loop in JavaScript, which is going to go ahead and make things easy for you. What am I talking about? I'm going to be giving an example of for loop. So for loop is basically a loop in JavaScript which starts with a keyword for, and inside of that we are going to open parentheses and we're going to let a variable. So this variable is going to be our index, and this index by default is going to be 0, and we are checking if the value is less than or equals to 10. And if it is less than or equals to 10, I want this value to be plus. Now what is this going to do? This is going to create a variable called I, and now this I has a default value of 0. This is the initial value, and if the initial value is less than or equals to 10, which in case the value is less than 10, so if this statement is true, we are executing this. Until and unless this statement doesn't become false, it is simply going to go ahead and basically run it, okay? Yep, that is what we are going to go. From 0, let's go for 1 because it's going to go ahead and start from 1. Okay, but we're simply going to go ahead and console, never mind, console.log, and we're going to go and print I. So yep, we can see that it's starting from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So how do we go ahead and do that in reverse? How do we do that in reverse? To do that in reverse, we need 10 over here, and we are simply going to go ahead and say that if I is greater than or equals to 0, greater than or equals to 0, we're simply going to go ahead and subtract the value. So what do we get is we can see that the value is going to go ahead and start from 10 and all the way up to 0, but we can simply going to say 1, and yep, we see that this one. So this minus minus and plus plus, what it actually means is that minus means to go ahead and subtract the value by 1, and plus plus means the adding the value by 1. So I'm writing over here, minus minus means minus 1, and plus plus means plus 1. Or you can simply go ahead and say minus plus is equals to 1. This is the same as doing that, but we use this operator because it makes it much easier for us to work with functions, for loops. And after we've learned about for loops, we're going to be learning about something called while loops. So what are while loops? We've learned about for loop. What are while loops? So I'm going to go ahead and give a space over here so that it's much more notable. Now, what are for and while loops? So for and while loops are basically those loops which we use in order to print something out simultaneously, for a long period of time or for a repetition. So while loops are basically like for loops, but we need to go ahead and declare the variable in the initial starting. So the variable is going to be var num is equals to, let's say, 1. We can do the same thing over here using for loop, but while loop is also in JavaScript, which is just for a short term. So if number is less than or equals to, we can go for 10, and we can go ahead and console.log. We can go ahead and console.log the number, and we're going to increment this by 1. Now if you go ahead and see, I is not defined. Oh, it's not I, it's num. Never mind. And we can see that from 1 it's starting and all the way up to printing to 10. So What are while and for loops used for? While and for loops are essentially used for the same stuff, but while loop serves a different purpose in JavaScript, and a for loop also serves a different purpose in JavaScript. So it is good that you use for loop. It is not good that you use. I'm not saying that it is not good that you use while loop. You can use while loop as well, but for loop is the goal of the things. Okay. So now let's go ahead and create a project over here. So project. So now in this project, what are we gonna do? We are gonna go ahead and use the functions of arrays as well. We're gonna be using arrays in this thing. So I want you to print the elements inside of an array using for or while loops. Now how do we do that? So I'm gonna go ahead and make it for the while loop, and you can do it the same for a for loop. So I'm gonna go ahead and say var. Okay, let me go ahead and make an array. Const arr is equals to an array. It's going to be going to say suppose let's go ahead and say Safi. It's going to be code programs, and we can go ahead and list the objects as well. So listing the object, we can go for name is going to be code enthusiastic, job is going to be coding, so coding. So now we don't get anything over here, but we're going to use while loop here. So in this time, we're gonna go ahead and set up a variable. So var is equal, so we can go for a let as well, but we're gonna use a var here. So var is going to be var is equals to. Now I'm gonna ask you a question over here. So this is a quiz, okay? Why aren't we using const declare variables in loops? Why aren't we using const declare variables? So this is a simple question. You just need to answer it in the description. Pin this, pin the timing, and you can simply go ahead and tell me the answer. So a var, and we're simply gonna go ahead and go for a index, and index is by default it's going to be 0, and this index is going to be default, so we're going to be using while loop, and we want this loop to be running. We want this loop to be running unless if it is the same length as this one array. So what am I talking about? Arr dot, there's a function called length, arr dot length. So we can get the length of the array using this. So it's basically like saying 1 2 3 4. So it's basically like index is less than or equals to 4, then simply go ahead and run unless this statement is completely false. Oh yeah, unless this statement is completely false. Unless this statement is false, just go ahead and start doing all of that stuff. Okay, so it basically makes this statement come false in this one. That is what we're doing. So what do we want? We want this to be less than or equals to array.length, and we want to go ahead and print out console.log array, and the index, we're passing in the index, and we want this to be I++, which is index here. If I go ahead and save, you can see that 1 2 3 4, and the last one is undefined because I set up equals to. I don't need equals to, just less than, because it is going to go ahead and give us 5. So we don't have the 5th element, so we don't need that. So it is going to go Safi code programs and this. But now what are we going to go? How can we print the job and the name as well? So to print the job and the name, we have a operator over here. We have a operator called if it exists. So this is just like, this is just going on and saying that if something exists, so if name exists, then we can go ahead and print out the name here. So go ahead and do that. I'm gonna say undefined, 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 because we know that there's nothing inside of here. But this is basically saying that if the name exists, then we can simply go ahead and print out the name over here. Yep. So that is what it is. We can simply go ahead and Control S and save that. Now if we just go ahead and say name, then we can see that it is going to go ahead and say undefined, because we know that the name is not available there. But if you go for the operator over here, question mark operator, we are just going to see undefined, but we're going to see code enthusiastic as well. So it's just telling me that if this exists, then only go ahead and print out the name. Don't print when it doesn't exist. So that is what it is. We can go ahead and simply do that. Yup. Now we've learned about for and while loops. Now we've also learned about functions. Now I'm gonna go ahead and simply going to go make another project. So in this project, what are we gonna do? Now in this project, we are going to go ahead and make a multiplication table. So write down the multiplication table of 5. So multiplication table of 5. So I'm going to be doing this on my own, and you have to make multiplication table of 10. Or maybe I can give you another one. Okay, I'll give you another. I'll do this one myself, then I'll give you another one. So first of all, we want to go ahead and make a for loop over here. I simply need to go ahead and comment all of this out. For loop, I don't need this one over here. I can go ahead and comment this one out as well. And I don't need this array. Now for, let's go for the index. For let, we can simply go for var I is equals to 0, and we can simply say I is less than or equals to 10, and we are going to go ahead and go for if the statement is not if the statement comes true, if this unless and okay, until and unless this statement does not become false, unless the statement doesn't become false, we are simply going to go ahead and increment this I++. I'm going to go here, console.log. We want to go ahead and say 5 times x, the index over here I is equals to 5 times the I over here. Yep, that is what we know. Okay, so we're simply gonna go ahead and print out the table here, but we are going to go ahead and use a function. So we're gonna use a function over here. So now I'm gonna go ahead and give you a little bit a description about functions, just a tip about function. So in the ES6 update, in the ES6, we know what ES is. It is ECMAScript. I told you in the first tutorial of the video. Now ES6 is basically ECMAScript, and it's the thing that maintains JavaScript. It has made easier for us to create functions using the arrow key. What am I talking about? Simply go ahead and declare a variable that is going to be the table, or we can go for get table is equals to, it's going to take a parameter and it's going to go ahead and simply run a function like this. So it's creating a function using this one. The syntax also looks good, and we call it as the fat arrow function. So we might not get the table of any number. So we're going to go for the num over here. So it's going to be taking a parameter of number, and we want this to be the number instead of anything. Okay, it's not going to be 5, it's going to be num here. Yep, that is how we can go ahead and get the value of any kind of number. So now we want to run this function get table, and we want to pass in the number. What number do I want the table of? I want the table of 5. So if I go ahead and run this, you can see that it's starting from 0 all the way up to 10. Now I want you to go ahead and make a function. So write a function that prints the table of any number from the bottom, or reverse table. So that prints the table of any number from the bottom or the reverse table. So you can use the concept that we've learned over here, and you can do basic stuff over here. This is basic, simply just you can go ahead and do the same as well that I've taught over here, and this concept right here. So you can use that. So this is it for today's video, and in the next video we will learn more about this, and we'll learn more about things like DOM elements and the identifier and all of that stuff in JavaScript. So stay tuned. In this course I'm going to be teaching you, and I'm going to be making you a JavaScript expert. And yep, that is it. I'll see you in the next video. Till then, take care everyone, and goodbye. And don't forget to like and subscribe the video and join our Discord server. Thank you for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.